A friend was just finishing off his course in studying to be a psychiatrist in university in America. And at the end of the term, at the end of the years when he was receiving his doctorate, the school brought in different forms of alternative medicine and healing. They brought in a person with herbal medicine, they brought in a hypnotist to show different powers of hypnotism and healing. And then right at the end, the school brought in, for I think a series of 3 lectures, a witch, a grand witch, who would demonstrate her powers, how she used them for healing. And my friend, who had studied in yeshiva for 1 or 2 years in Jerusalem, was there sitting at the back on the left-hand corner of the lecture theatre, and the witch came in and explained her different powers that she uses in spiritualism, in black magic, in order to heal patients, people who have problems. Then at the end of the first lecture, she said, "Now I'd like to demonstrate to you and show you my powers." She said, "Please raise your hand, and I'd like to show you something." And she then turned her attention to one of the people who raised their hand and was able to reveal something personal, which the person was thinking. She was able to stare, and through the means, I suppose, of black magic, whatever it was, she was able to reveal something personal about the person. And it was really a shocking, unbelievable event to see. And everyone was astounded by it. And my friend was sitting there at the back, and he listened to the lecture, and he was, of course, very suspicious about this. He was an Orthodox Jew who sat there at the back. And the second time she came to give a lecture, the same thing happened. But he noticed that as she looked for people, she avoided the left-hand corner of the lecture theatre. She always turned to the right. And he was suspicious that she was avoiding him. He turned to the professor after the end of the second lecture and he said as follows: "If she asks again in the third lecture, in the final lecture, I would like permission," he asked the professor, "if no one else will put their hand up but me." And the professor agreed. He said, "Why?" He said, "I have reasons. I think that there's a certain fraud which has taken place. I think she's avoiding me." Came to the end of the third lecture, and true enough, she turned around and asked the class, and no one raised their hand. The only person was him on the left-hand corner, and she didn't look his way. And then the professor said, "There's somebody with their hand raised up at the back." He was sitting there with his hand raised, and she refused to look at him. The professor stared at her, and she had no choice. She was put in a very difficult position. She turned at him, she stared at him, she turned white, she vomited, and then she fainted in front of the whole group of students. And they called the first aid, and they called the medical people, and they revived her. And then they turned around to her and said to her, "What was the problem?" She said, "The first time I came into the lecture theatre, I realized that somebody was inhibiting my powers. Then I realized it was someone sitting in the corner." And they revived her and said, "Why, what's wrong with him? What's so special about him?" She said, "I can't read him." "Why not?" "He believes in God and he prays to God. I can't touch him." And it was an incredible statement, an incredible vindication of what it was for the Jewish people. He was an Orthodox Jew who prayed to God. She didn't have powers with him. Interesting, he said afterwards, there was also a Jesuit priest who was sitting in the group as well, and he didn't disturb her, but the Orthodox Jew was. Interesting, after that, after she had said that, this student, a year or 2 later, came to Israel and was taken into one of the great rabbis in Bnei Brak. I think it was Rav Shach, who was a Rosh Yeshiva, Polovitch Yeshiva, and he explained, he was asked to say over this incident in front of Rav Shach, in front of the Rosh Yeshiva. And Rosh Yeshiva heard the story, and then turned around and said, "What are you so amazed about? Did you know the power of prayer? Do you know what you are? What happens when you pray to God and you believe in God? You have enormous powers of holiness. You're a different person." And he was astonished and upset that people were so astounded by him. What was obviously to the great Talmudic scholar, to us, we would be surprised about that. We see from this the enormous power of prayer of every single Jew. When they stand in front of the Almighty and pray, we have tremendous power in our hands, which we may not be aware of. Maybe we should take that lesson to heart before we go into the shul and we pray on Rosh Hashanah for New Year and pray to the Almighty and ask for His help and ask for His support, for success and good health. We hope in the coming year.